The NFL annual meetings kicked off this past weekend, and as expected, the newest head coach was in attendance, making his presence known on day one. He was seen sitting next to his arch-rival Jim Harbaugh, which added to the buzz. Of course, the offseason wouldn't be complete without a few rumors flying around, and with that said, could the Las Vegas Raiders be interested in trading for Miami Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill? I'll dive into all that and more in this video. But first, if this is your first time tuning in, and you're a fan of daily Raiders content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos just like this one. Now, let's get into the details from the NFL annual meetings and what stood out. Pete Carroll and John Schneider were both there, alongside a crowd of reporters covering everything happening. It was a jam-packed event with plenty of noteworthy takeaways. One of the big highlights was hearing Pete Carroll's thoughts on his former quarterback and now star in Seattle, Geno Smith. Carroll shared how vital Geno was to the team's success, praising his growth throughout his career. He highlighted how Geno's work ethic and competitive spirit have truly impressed him. According to Carroll, Geno is a fantastic leader and an incredibly talented player who's had a remarkable journey. Despite sitting on the bench for nearly 6 years, Geno didn't let that time go to waste. Instead, he remained focused, continuously learning and staying prepared for the moment he would get his shot. Now, look at the results. 3 winning seasons, impressive completion stats, and durability. Carroll made it clear that Geno's growth has been a key part of the Seahawks' success, and he's fortunate to have him on the team. On top of that, Vinny reported that Carroll, along with others, believes the Raiders have improved significantly during the first phase of free agency. He's especially excited about the new additions to the secondary and linebacker positions, such as Devin White and Allandon Roberts. When asked about the possibility of a new contract for Geno, Carroll responded that they are already working on it. Of course, we know Pete Carroll has always been a big supporter of Geno Smith, which is why the Raiders were able to trade for him so early in the offseason. This move made a lot of sense for the team, especially given the need for stability at the quarterback position. Now, with that addressed, the Raiders have been able to focus on other areas of improvement, particularly defensively. While there haven't been many big moves on the offensive side outside of adding offensive lineman Alex Kappa and running back Raheem Mostert, the Raiders have been busy improving other key positions. Most of the roster changes have been on the defensive side of the ball, especially after losing key players like Trayvon Mullen, Robert Spillane, and Divine Diablo. The list goes on, but the Raiders have brought in several players with something to prove. Head coach Pete Carroll has expressed excitement about seeing what these players can bring to the team. These are guys who will enter the season with a chip on their shoulders, ready to show their worth. One thing Pete Carroll is known for is his ability to bring the best out of players, especially those who haven't been utilized to their full potential elsewhere. Many of the new additions to the Raiders roster certainly have the potential to make an impact. And what's even better is that most of these players sign team-friendly contracts, which is beneficial for the team in the long run. Now, regarding Geno Smith, his name has come up a lot recently, and fans have been wondering where things stand with him. According to Pete Carroll, the team is still working on finalizing a deal, which likely means they're hammering out the details, especially when it comes to the length of the extension and the guaranteed money. Hopefully, the deal will be done soon, so Geno Smith can focus on preparing for the season and addressing Raider Nation without any distractions leading up to the draft. With all the talk around Geno Smith, it's clear that he will be the starting quarterback moving forward. However, that doesn't mean the Raiders aren't still looking at potential quarterbacks for the future. Head coach Pete Carroll made it known that he's open to the possibility of drafting a quarterback in the 2025 NFL Draft, even if it's not in the first round. He's keen to evaluate all the prospects available. This isn't exactly breaking news, but it does reaffirm something we already know. The Raiders are still considering drafting a quarterback. If they don't grab one in the first round, there are still plenty of intriguing options. For instance, Shatter Sanders has been highly regarded, and if he's available at number 6, the Raiders will likely grab him. However, if Sanders isn't there, another name to watch is Jackson Dart, a quarterback who is rising up draft boards quickly. While I do think selecting Jackson Dart with the 6th overall pick is a bit of a reach, if the Raiders are truly high on him, he could end up being a surprise pick. However, I'd feel more comfortable with the Raiders either trading back in the first round or trading up later in the first round to select Dart if they see him as their guy. A quarterback who could realistically be available in the second round, and one I'd love to see in a Raiders uniform, is Jalen Moreno. Coincidentally, he recently had a visit with the team, and reports have surfaced suggesting that the Raiders are intrigued by him. This is a player I've mentioned before as someone who would be an excellent fit in Chip Kelly's system. Moreno could sit behind Geno Smith for a few years, learn the system, and acclimate to the NFL. When the time comes, he has the potential to be one of the most dynamic quarterbacks from this year's draft class. There are a few areas he needs to work on, mainly his accuracy and pocket presence, but he has all the physical tools to succeed at the next level. I believe the second round would be the ideal spot for the Raiders to pick him up. Now, if the Raiders decide to wait a bit longer to draft a quarterback, there are a few prospects who could be available in the third to fifth rounds. These include Will Howard from Ohio State, who possesses all the intangibles and has worked with Chip Kelly before. Another option is Quinn Ewers, who impressed at the Combine and is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the draft. Ewers has the potential to develop into a solid NFL quarterback. Lastly, there's Dylan Gabbera from Oregon. While he's a smaller quarterback, his playstyle reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson coming out of college. He could be the next Russell Wilson for Pete Carroll. These are the quarterbacks I believe the Raiders could realistically target in the draft. Sure, there are other names like Brady Cook and Tyler Show, but I don't see those guys being the future at quarterback for the Raiders. If the team ends up selecting any of these other quarterbacks, it would likely be as a developmental backup rather than the long-term solution. With that said, Raider Nation, what are your thoughts on Pete Carroll's comments about Geno Smith? And who would you like to see as the backup to Geno, or even as the future starting quarterback for the Raiders? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let's shift gears and talk about another player, former Raider hunter Renfrow. I touched on Renfrow's potential return in a recent video, especially after his meeting with the team. Coach Dave Ziegler was asked about Renfrow, and here's what he had to say. "We were just visiting and checking in on him. I'll just say he's in a really good spot now and wants to continue his career. We would be remiss if we didn't consider it. If there's one thing we can say about this new regime, it's that they're doing their due diligence and keeping all options open at every position." Hunter Renfrow, who last played with the Raiders and hasn't been seen since, is definitely a viable option for the team moving forward. As I mentioned in a previous video, I think Hunter Renfrow could be a perfect fit as a wide receiver 3 or 4 on this team, especially as a slot option. Of course, these comments don't reveal much, and it's unclear whether the Raiders will actually bring him back. My guess is that they'll wait until after the draft to revisit the situation. They'll likely assess their needs and see if any veteran wide receivers, like Tyler Lockett or Hunter Renfrow, are still available. After the draft, they can fill in the gaps accordingly. Personally, I hope the Raiders consider bringing Renfrow back. I truly believe he could be an invaluable piece to the team, and I don't think it would cost the Raiders much to re-sign him. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see how things play out. Another wide receiver that has come up recently in trade rumors is Tyreek Hill. The Raiders are in need of a playmaker at wide receiver, and Hill could be a possible target. Tyreek Hill, who plays for the Miami Dolphins, has been linked to trade rumors following the 2024 season. After Hill tweeted "Peace Son" recently, NFL Network's Adam Rank mentioned a certain AFC West team as a potential destination, which is why I'm bringing it up here. Now, despite a down year in 2024 with 959 receiving yards, mostly due to quarterback injuries, Tyreek Hill's age and contract situation might make him a more affordable option for the Raiders. Before you start calling this all nonsense, keep in mind, I'm just speculating. The Raiders have been mentioned in these rumors, and since they do need help at wide receiver, it's worth considering all options. Would I want Tyreek Hill on the Raiders? Absolutely. Even at 31 years old, Hill would be a huge upgrade as the team's #1 wide receiver. He's a deep threat with elite speed and could be a perfect match for Geno Smith's arm strength. But the big question is, what would it cost to acquire him? That all depends on what the Dolphins decide to do. They could either keep him or release him, and given the cryptic tweets and reports of Hill being frustrated with the Dolphins, there's a possibility he could be released, allowing him to sign with any team he chooses. However, if the Dolphins decide to trade him, they'll likely ask for a significant return. I could see them requesting multiple second-round picks, or maybe even a first-round pick, depending on what other teams are offering. At that price, I'd personally pass on Tyreek Hill. Despite how much I'd love to see him in silver and black, I wouldn't want to pay too much for Tyreek Hill, especially considering he could ask for a significant contract extension. As much as I'd love to see him in silver and black and imagine how explosive he could make this offense, especially if the Raiders continue to add more offensive weapons through the draft, I highly doubt they'll make a move for him. Plus, the team already has a receiver with a similar skill set in Trey Tucker. While Tucker isn't as dynamic as Hill, he does provide speed and could serve as a deep threat, which means the Raiders might not need to pursue a player like Tyreek Hill. In terms of more realistic options, I think the Raiders might look into signing Tyler Lockett, re-signing Hunter Renfrow, or potentially trading for a guy like Alec Pierce. These are the kinds of moves that I could see happening, and they wouldn't cost the Raiders nearly as much as acquiring Hill would. With that said, Raider Nation, I just wanted to bring up Tyreek Hill and give you my thoughts on whether or not he'd be a good fit for the team. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Would you want to trade for Tyreek Hill? And if so, what would you be willing to give up to bring him to Las Vegas? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time.